Welcome to Finding Contentment, the official podcast of the American Institute of Stress. The goal of this podcast is to explore the science, psychology, and practical wisdom that can help us manage our stress. If you are looking for personal growth and professional success, or just want a more fulfilling life, visit us at stress.org. And now here is the host and executive director of the American Institute of Stress, Will Heckman.
Hey, greetings, everyone. This is your host of Finding Contentment and the executive director for the American Institute of Stress. It's Will Heckman. Thanks again for joining us today. You know, I'd like to ask that all of you are listening or watching this podcast today, go make some time. Go to stress.org, see all the resources we have available, including our section on what we're going to talk about today, which is suicide. And there are many others. And please make sure also to subscribe to our magazines. And if you're watching us again, of course, please hit the like button. Do me a favor, subscribe. Helps our channel grow. Okay, as I mentioned, September, which is when we are recording this, is Suicide Prevention Month. In recognition of that, today's episode tackles one of the most critical and sensitive topics of our time. It's suicide prevention. Suicide is a heartbreaking reality that affects millions of people around the world. It touches the lives of individuals, families, and even entire communities. And despite the stigma that often surrounds it, open dialogue and understanding are crucial in preventing the tragedy and offering hope to those in need. You know, according to the CDC, in 2022, over 49,000 people died by suicide. That's one death every 11 minutes. Not only that, but they also reported that 13.2 million people seriously thought about suicide, and it's just the ones we know about. It also went on to say that 3.8 million, almost 4 million people actually sat down and made a plan on how to do it. That's pretty scary. And 1.6 million people attempted suicide. So in today's episode, we're going to explore the complex emotional and psychological factors that lead to suicidal thoughts, discuss the warning signs, look at what to look out for, and highlight the most effective strategies for intervention and support. We're joined by my friend Brett Cotter. He's a leading voice in the field of mental health and stress management and suicide prevention. He will share his expertise and insights on how we can play a role in saving lives. And whether you've been personally affected by suicide, I myself have lost more than one friend to suicide, or you work in the field of mental health or simply want to learn more about how to support others, this episode will be for you. And hopefully together we can break the silence, offer hope, and make a difference. As I said, the person who's with us today is Brett Cotter, and he is making a big difference. Brett is an author and Stress Is Gone founder, and has over 20 years experience helping people release emotional pain. He facilitates groups at Omega, Kripalu, Tibet House, and Himalayan Institute. Brett is AAETS certified. His method is certified by the American Institute of Stress. He is also IMMA accredited, and he's certified suicide prevention specialist, meditation teachers, and trauma recovery coaches. And Brett is Meditation University's trauma specialist for their teachers training program. So join me in giving a warm welcome to Brett Cotter. Brett, thanks for coming today, man.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And it's an honor to be with AIS and starting Suicide Prevention Month. So it's a real, true honor to be here with you.
Well, you know, I wanted to have an episode this month with somebody who actually has some experience in the field of suicide prevention. You've done a lot of different things. You hold retreats. I know you just had one. It was very successful. And you've done many different things in the mental health field, including stress management. But how did you get started in focusing on suicide prevention?
So it happened organically. I started coaching clients and leading workshops around 2002. And then I had my first client on a phone session where suicidal ideation came up. It was in our first coaching session. She came to me with severe depression. And as we went down the rabbit hole, it surfaced her suicidal ideation. And as we breathed into the tension in her body, expressed all the emotions around it, and she said the thought that she was dreading, it actually released. And underneath all the fear around her suicidal ideation, there was like endless peace. It was like she faced her biggest fear and we did it together. And it was in that moment I realized that if we could just face it together, it's almost like the person needed a guide to get there to unpack the pain. And then once you face it, you're connected, you're present, and you're compassionate. That fear and that pain and that heartache starts to release. So that's where it started. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, I started partnering with Michelle Ladd and National Veteran Resources, and she drives a 22-0 Veterans Stop Suicide RV cross country. All the veterans she meets in her travels that were really on the verge, she would give them my number and we would connect and we would do coaching sessions. And that's where I really started to learn a lot more about the pain that veterans go through and really a lot about what works in releasing and facing that inner pain. And what I found was when you provide a space for somebody and you help them unpack, almost like unpacking dirty laundry packed in tight luggage, you're unpacking it, you're airing it out, you're releasing it. They get a new lease on life. And that's what I was finding through partnering with Michelle Ladd. And last year, I was contacted by a large veteran service organization with a suicide prevention hotline to train their staff in a mindfulness-based approach to working the hotline. So that's where I actually wrote out the protocol that I've been using, since 2004, progressively more and more and more. And we wrote it out and trained up their staff. And then I've trained subsequent vet-to-vet crisis counselors and peer support specialists in the suicide prevention protocol. And it's been saving lives ever since.
Well, you know what? I do want to talk about that program, but there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you before that. One is that there are a lot of people going through many different stressful challenges right now. Obviously, working at the American Institute of Stress, we hear about them. In your experience, are there some typical stress triggers or life events that lead to the onset of suicide ideation?
Yeah, great question. I want to jump in on that. Every soul is unique and has their own unique pitfalls and tendencies. But I'll say this, one of the things I see a lot of are medication changes, toxic relationships, family court issues where a party is not able to see their children when they want to see them, and narcissistic relationships, right? Also, not finding a job or being let go, especially when your identity was closely tied to what your job title was. But there are a number of issues. Those are just some of the ones that I see recurring often.
Well, it's funny you said, it's not funny. It's ironic you said those things because as you're saying them, I'm going, oh yeah. Like, yeah, if you're feeling all of a sudden really depressed and having thoughts of suicide, look and see, did your medication change? Did you start taking something new? Is there a chemical imbalance in your body that's something that you might think about? And that might be all it is. So that's a great point that people should look at that. The other great point is and I've known of situations like this where people have lost their job or retired and lost part of their identity. Big place where that occurs is being a police officer, a first responder. Police officers be identified for so many years as I'm a cop, and all of a sudden they're not. And I've talked to psychologists who deal with police officer suicide, and that's one of the things. You're absolutely right. They lose their identity. And you're also right, it's different for everybody, but those are some. I didn't think about the family court stuff. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, not seeing your kids or loved ones when you want to, and then also relationship breakups or loss of a loved one. Those are the recurring ones that I most often see as well.
Okay, so a thought just occurred to me with the relationship ones. And this is out of the blue, so if you don't know, it's okay. Does age play a factor in that? I'm thinking like, the Romeo and Juliet versus a guy who's 60, when they end the relationship, the feeling is different. Did you find that in your experience?
Here's what I find is that folks in their late teens to mid 30s, when they go through that breakup and they didn't want to break up with the person, at that stage of your life, usually you have more emotions, more chemicals, more hormones pumping. When you're in the 60s and 70s, you're emotionally more stable, but you have the thought of, I don't have time to meet somebody else. I don't think I'm going to meet somebody else because I don't have that much time left. So it's different. So I feel like it's hard in the middle stages of your life because you have more emotions. When you're in your later stages of your life and you find more calmness, when that loss happens, it's like finding another mate is, it's like something that's so far off, and then it's the doom and gloom of being alone the whole time. So it's different, but I feel it's equal in pain.
Good
if
point.
That makes sense.
Yes, it makes absolute sense. Good point. Okay, so what about some coping strategies or interventions? Have you found what have you found to be most effective for, let's say, parents? As an educator, I worked with teenagers, and teenagers or children struggling with suicide thoughts. What can parents do? Is there some kind of game plan they can have?
A parent's approach to their child when the child is upset, it's so important to release your own stress while you're interacting with your child so you can truly be present and listen. So often when our child tells us something, and God forbid, let's say it's, something around suicidal ideation, that's what a parent dreads to hear, right?
Yeah.
That's going to trigger a ton of stress inside the parent. Now the parent starts overreacting, and that overrides your child's emotions, and it keeps you from being present and really connecting with them, connecting with their pain, being compassionate and leaning in. So what I typically do is train parents to do some of our protocol that I train counselors on. I just wanted to share something really quick. It's just a small component of the suicide prevention protocol. Just want to share this one quick.
Please, we'd love to see it.
Yeah. So here you see the 5 prompts in the middle of the screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is so important when your child is emotional, is really upset, is depressed, to come into their room, wherever they might be, connect with them, sit next to them, make sure a part of your body's touching them. And you want to lean in with your left side, touching them with your left hand. Leaning in with the left is showing body language that you are receptive to whatever is going on with them. And when you're talking to them, have one palm up at least. So if your hand is on their lap or, it's on a table, wherever it is, show that you have at least one palm up. It's a sign of being receptive, and it engages them, okay? Another thing you could do body language wise is use your left eye and look into their right eye. That tells their brain that you're also in receptive mode. These are just body language tricks. Also soft facial expressions and soft eyes, and just a gentle leaning with your left shoulder. Okay, after that, you want to focus on these 5 prompts. Please tell me more. Now your child's going to start expressing things about school, how they feel, whatever it is. Then when they're done, you're going to say, I want to hear everything. And then hopefully you get another round of expression out of them, right? When they're done, you're going to say, what's the hardest part to talk about? Now you're going to get a plume of emotion, okay? You're going to let them go. You're not going to judge. You're not going to jump in. right? You're just going to listen and you're going to lean in with compassion and childlike curiosity. Okay. You're going to keep your fear off to the side by breathing into your own tension and releasing it as you're going through this process with your child. And then after that question, you're going to ask, what's your biggest fear about that? And then as they're talking, you're going to feel some tension, but you're going to breathe into the tension and you're going to release it. So you're going to stay calm and present. When they're done answering that question, you're going to say, what does that feel like? And by this time, that's your transition into the body, you know? And what I found with people really suffering with suicidal ideation and depression, it feels like 50 sewer caps right on their breastplate, compressing them. And it's something they can't escape. And if you could just imagine that, 50 sewer plates on top of your chest, and you can't escape it. Okay. But as you start to ask them these prompts and these questions, and they start expressing their emotions, you start unpacking that deep emotional luggage and you start unwinding it. And once you get them to that bottom baseline point where they're talking about their core fear and what it feels like, that's when you start to bring them closer and you start to connect with them. Right. And then the folks that I train deeper, I train them on how to release the tension from the body. So I just hope that's really helpful for some parents just to connect with their child, because what a person needs that's suffering from suicidal ideation and depression is love and connection.
Yeah.
That's it. It's love and connection. And they are currently under the illusion that they lost it. So you have to give them a little jump start. And it's not going to happen if you're stressed out too.
Right. You can't really bring logic into it. You know, it's like, okay, there's no reason to be upset that this didn't really work. You know, it's like telling somebody who's expressing all this stuff to you to just calm down. What you just showed us is great. There's a game plan. There's a way to do it. There's for a guy like me, I love having a go-to. Okay, step one, do this. Step two, and your insights about body language are absolutely right on. I mean,
And
you know,
I just wanted to touch on something you just
Sure.
said. It's like our approach to it.
Yeah.
And I just want to say this to everyone listening throughout all time and space. Mental illness starts with matters of the heart. Mental illness starts with matters of the heart. And I don't care if it's genetic, something inherited, because it started with a matter of the heart with one of your ancestors, and then it got passed down. Mental illness always starts with matters of the heart. Okay. Once it's too painful to be here, we jump in over here. And then our brain and our thought process starts to fracture and fragment. And then we just then more and more mental illness starts. And to me, the key is unpacking the pain through guided expression. So we unpack, unlock, and release all the old emotional baggage and luggage. And we're just approaching the problem from the wrong place, culturally and in our society. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you brought your car into the mechanic because your car has a motor problem, and your mechanic is working on the transmission, scratching their head saying, I don't know why this thing's not working right. I can't get it running right. Because you're working on the wrong part. We are approaching this problem through the mind, and we should be coming into the heart. And that's why my program works, and that's why the suicide prevention protocol works. That's why I can train anyone to do this.
And you're very successful at it. I mean, you know, what you and I have discussed is I don't think I could ever be a counselor. You have to be a certain kind of person to do that. But the training that you've shown me is such an enormous help, because you have a formula, or you have at least a guideline, because sometimes things can hit you as somebody is saying to you out of left field. You know, I've been there.
The toughest part about being a therapist, a counselor, mental health professional, a nurse in the trauma section of the hospital, is you hear so much stuff and you're not trained on how to release your own stress as you're hearing it. So it attaches to your consciousness and your body and in your cells.
Mm.
So the key that I teach, the first one, is anyone I'm training, is how to release your own stress real time in the moment as you're hearing the person's pain. So you could be present with it. So you're not getting brought down their rabbit hole. You're unpacking them and throwing them a lifeline to pull them out of their rabbit hole to get them on your level. It's totally different. And I feel like this is the cause of the biggest burnout issue with social workers, therapists, because we're hearing so much and absorbing so much, right? But again, the key is staying clear, present, compassionate, opening our heart, being in the moment, listening, and leaning in with childlike curiosity so they know that they're being seen and heard. And that's when they feel connected. And that's when they could show you the worst parts about their pain. And then you breathe them through releasing it.
And if you are feeling those things, and reach out to a counselor, reach out to someone. Don't try and go through it alone. It can be really hard. I'm going to put underneath here the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number. We'll scroll a little along the bottom of the screen from time to time so you can write it down. If you call somebody, just talk to somebody. You'd be surprised how much that helps.
988 is a lifesaver, and people in our training program, we bring in people into our training room that are suicidal, that call 988. Some of them that can't afford a therapist,
Right.
they call 988 for weekly therapy,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that an operator is trained in doing is, are you calling to talk? Do you need services? Or do we need to call 911? Right? Those are the main three avenues that they're trained to go down, right? And we do the same thing in our training.
I was going to ask you about that.
Mhm.
At some point, in the circumstances, or you're talking to someone, and you observe an increase in the intensity of their suicide thoughts. What do you do when it becomes a dire situation, an at-risk individual that needs help immediately? Do you just call 911?
That's a great question. And I just wanted to share the a little screen share here so we could look at this a little bit.
Sure.
And dive a little bit deeper. So here's the heart and soul of the protocol. We have the 5 prompts, then we have encourage and connect and transition to breath work. However, if you look over here, right, towards the right side, it says assess risk, right?
Right.
Assess immediately if the person is extremely upset, erratic, quiet, aloof, or alludes to suicidal ideation, right? Do you feel like you're in danger of harming yourself or anyone else right now? Do you have the means to do so? Have you made a plan? Have you started preparing? Did you tell anyone? Okay. Now, if there's risk of harm, which means that they answered yes to some of these questions or any one of them, now your job is to keep them on the phone and get 911 involved. Okay. And these are all different statements to keep them on the phone, right? So that's just, our approach to being authentic and in the moment with whoever we're talking to. And when our ears pick something up, then we switch gears into assessing risk. So we're unpacking, and then we're assessing risk. Whenever we get to the bottom at the end of the phone call or the session, when we've released the bulk of their pain, their biggest fear, right? And these kind of things can take years in therapy. We're doing it quickly with those 5 prompts. Okay, because we're being really available and present with their pain, and it shows itself and it comes up. So if we are present and vulnerable with it, we're not overreacting. They know we care. They show us the core of their pain. It arises from the back of the psyche emotionally, and then we use the breath work to release it from the body. Okay. When the session is getting towards the end, one of the final things we do, and this is one of the toughest questions that all of our trainees go through and they have to do, is, do you have any thoughts of hurting yourself whatsoever? And then usually you get a little chuckle from the person, like, no, not at all. You know what I mean? Sometimes they might take a little bit longer to answer, sometimes not a chuckle, but usually the arc of the conversation brought them from so deep and so much pain to such a peaceful place the thought of hurting themselves is like a million miles away. So that's the goal we want to get to at the end of the conversation, and we want to confirm it. That's
I
really,
think a lot of people who are going through this, and if you're out there listening to this, please, like I said, seek help. Don't be afraid. I was going to talk to you about, because what is really holding people back? What are the barriers for people is it just the stigma to prevent them from reaching out to people? I realize, I'm making a phone call. I'm talking to a stranger. To be honest with you, I sometimes think that's better, to talk to someone who doesn't know you personally. It might be more comfortable. I don't know. Everyone is different. But in your experience, and you have a lot more experience in this than I do, what is the biggest barrier from people reaching out? We have way too many people who are actually going through this. So many people sitting down and writing a plan and what keeps them from just reaching out?
I think it's, as you said, the stigma, right? And then also social anxieties. And then the black hole. Often people describe it as the roof has caved in. The roof has caved in. They cannot see any light. And they feel those sewer caps on their breastplate, on their chest. And it's like suffocating, right? And often they don't even have the words to explain what it feels like, because it's like an otherworldly entity that often releases energetically from the body in the back of the psyche when we get underneath it and unhook it emotionally, right? And you actually feel it release. We just had a big one in the workshop. Every retreat and workshop that I do, there's someone going there that it's their last resort. Because I've been told that at the end of almost every retreat. This was my last stop. Thank you. And knock on wood, everyone is, still with us, that has come to a retreat, And so I think that's the big thing, the stigma. I feel the social anxiety, like showing up to a vet center or going to get counseling, leaving the house. The social anxiety of leaving the house is such a big deal. And that is what we overcome from the telephone.
Right.
And we bring them into the center. So I'm really lucky in that the folks that I've trained so far, they work in localized crisis line and vet centers where the vets can actually come in for programming, for music lessons, for yoga, for hyperbaric oxygen, for parties, right? To see
Awesome.
Bands play, veteran bands play rock and roll. So, holiday parties. And it's just incredible when the person goes from making that leap of dialing the number, making the phone call, opening up to a trained counselor. The counselor brings them in. And now, this is the key, changing their weekly schedule in a way that hooks the person in because it's based on their interest. Oh, you like music? Come to the music therapy. Oh, you like horses? Let's do some equestrian therapy, right? So that's what it is, and oh, you want to learn how to meditate? Come to our meditation class. And it's all around their interest, pulling them in, and also what they need. Some folks need counseling and services around finances. Some need, they need a mental health therapist, a coach, counselors, group therapy for the family. It just depends on the individual, and you rope them in with a treatment plan that affects their life and changes their day in and day out routine. Once you add in a little bit of fun and thriving to your daily schedule, which right now, if you're depressed, your daily schedule is about barely surviving and feeling like crap. And that involves laying in bed too long or just going to work, coming home exhausted and feeling like you're caught in a Groundhog Day. Okay.
Yeah.
Rinse and repeat. So what we want to do is throw a monkey wrench into that program, literally opening up your phone's calendar or your computer's calendar and scheduling in even 5 minutes of a few of your favorite songs while you're brushing your teeth and in the shower changes the trajectory of your day. 20 minutes of meditation while you're going to sleep changes what's happening in your sleep. So that You can learn how to rest. The body repairs itself and the mind repairs itself in states of relaxation. It's built to do it. It's how do we get you to do it? How do we structure your day to implement some relaxation, some fun, to throw a monkey wrench in all the depression?
That's a really good point. In fact, I was going to ask you about that next, but you're right. It could start if you're having a problem, if you're depressed and you don't feel like getting out of the house. I understand. If you don't feel like going socializing, I understand. But if it gets to the point, you can make a phone call. It's important. It's just a phone call. It's just a conversation with somebody you don't know, not going to judge you, not going to be something that you don't want. They're just going to be there to help. And I was going to ask you about, the role of positive experiences have on all moments and how that can give people just hope. I think a lot of people who are in a very dark place and do something that they find themselves enjoying. So wait a second. Life is enjoyable. I'm doing it right now. And that might change their whole suicidal ideation because, wait a minute, it's not all bad. Maybe rethink things. I think that provides such a valuable experience when someone can go and do some music. I love the idea of music. I always have. Or do something like hang out with dogs. I know of a program where one of the a veteran, a woman who works at a college locally, started a program where veterans can go to the local humane society and just walk the dogs.
So
dogs have always cheered me up. Well, sometimes they drive me crazy too, but in a good way. So all that positive experience that you're giving to people, it's got to be an enormous help.
So I want to give a shout out to Mike Damon. He's a veteran and he's got usually like a few hundred veterans on his suicide watch list all over the country. He's a motorcycle rider, super awesome guy. He's drives out on his motorcycle into the middle of the country, cross country, visits people at their house, calls them all the time, right? And he just said that if they don't know that you care, you're wasting your time. So that's the first thing. And our phone call, the first phone call, when they reach the hotline, you're serenading the pain out of their body to getting them to express emotionally. After that first step is done, now you're serenading them to come into the office, to integrate them with a service plan and office events, right? Veteran events, the community. You mentioned walking dogs. I've recommended that to so many people that are on the recovery to depression, just going to the pound and just saying, going to the ASPCA and say, hey, I'm willing to volunteer and walk some dogs for you. I've never heard them say no. I mean, I'm sure some places they already have it covered, but usually it's a yes, right?
Usually it's a yes.
Usually it's a yes. And it is just amazing when you connect with animals and Mother Nature. Forest bathing is one of the things they do in Japan for depression. It's like the number one prescribed thing. Go into the forest and experience Mother Nature. So we really have to get back to pure basics here in our country.
I agree with that. And I've actually contacted Mike because, I'm a motorcyclist too. And we've had a discussion about actually doing something down here. One of these days, if it's possible, we're definitely going to do it. I'm involved with veteran organizations. And if you're listening to this, don't forget that the American Institute of Stress has a magazine called Combat Stress, where you can find a lot of information there as well. I wanted to ask you something and I don't know if the question makes sense, but in my head, is it thoughts about the future that influence people and their mental health, or is it something that's happening in their past? The reason I'm asking that is because my logical, lifeline down is if I see no future, and nothing ahead for me, that can lead to suicide ideation. Whereas if something has happened in my past and I'm past it, am I off about that?
No, I feel that when we are worried about our future, we are tying our shoelaces together before we leave the front door.
I
So
love that.
yeah, so if we're worried about our future, it's just like we're tying our shoelaces together before we leave the front door and start our day. It's just we're not able to move forward. You know, it's almost like a crippling thing worrying about the future. And anxiety and excitement energetically is very close. Okay. It's just reframing some of the doom and gloom thoughts that have created the neural pathways in your brain. Okay. From it's never going to get better to maybe it's going to get better. From it's never going to change to maybe it's going to change. Things are changing all the time.
Yeah, that's the one thing that doesn't change.
Yeah, things are changing all the time. Look at the weather, look at the world spinning in its rotation, going around the sun going around its, rotation and revolutions. So it's like everything's changing, right, around us. And the pain comes from being stuck in that moment. So I feel like it's a 50-50 split. Issues from the past, doom and gloom about the future, right? And some of the thoughts, the early warning sign thoughts, the red flag thoughts are, it's never going to get better. Nothing's working. It's never going to change, right? Those are like the red flag statements. And again, it's just identifying where you feel tension in your body when you're experiencing those thoughts, bringing some body awareness, touching it, connecting with the tense cells in your body, breathing into them, and then reprogramming those neural pathways by strengthening new ones that have a little bit of a brighter possibility. It is going to get better. Maybe it's going to get better. It's possible that it's going to get better. It's possible that it's going to change. Maybe it's going to change. That's like the next step. And then going into it is going to change. It is going to get better. It's definitely going to get better. It is getting better right now, right? So it's a gentle progression, and you're layering in these new neural pathways in your brain. Every time you say it and you breathe deeply and slowly, you're layering those neural pathways in and wiring it into the body, into the emotional component, right? Wherever you feel that tension, you're layering it in and wiring it into the body. The thoughts that are like the final wave of negative thoughts before someone commits suicide is my life was a waste, right? My life was a waste. Everyone else is better off without me. If you are hearing yourself think those two thoughts, call for help right now. Get on the phone with 988 and start the process, okay? If you heard a loved one or your clients say things like that, it is very important to have the 4 legs of support, right? To keep the table balanced, to keep a sound structure, right? I like to have the mental health professional, could be a really good coach, therapist. Then you have a great family member, someone you could rely on, someone that can be present with you, right? Then you have a friend, okay? Friend is really important. And then something around nature and activity, something that's going to be fun, whether that's equestrian therapy, whether that's spending time with animals, dogs, getting in nature, going for hikes, right?
Go fishing.
You go fishing. You got to get outside of the 4 walls. Okay. That's the main thing. Okay. So those 4 components. And what I found, this is another really interesting thing that I found that I don't think a lot of people know about. When we are depressed and suicidal, we're under the fantasy of who we want our support system to be. We want it to be our ex-girlfriend. We want it to be our ex-boyfriend. We want it to be that person that passed away. Whenever we fight against reality, we lose, right? So often when I find somebody that's suffering with suicidal ideation, and after we release some of the pain, we are reorganizing their support system. And I just ask them, who do you call when you're feeling down, right? I call this person. Okay, how do they handle it? Oh, they usually get upset. They usually get upset. They get triggered. I start hearing about their problems, right? So that's not the right person. You're calling a plumber when you need an electrician,
Right.
okay? If you need an electrician, you're not going to call the guy that fixes the pipes. Okay. So you got to call the right person. So it's restructuring your support system with people that can handle it. That's a super important key. And when I meet people often through the suicide hotlines and things like that, they're in the emotional gutter. In the first phone call, we get them out of the gutter, we put them on the sidewalk and dust them off, right? Once they're on the sidewalk, we bring them into the office, create a service plan, and then over the next couple of weeks, there's a transformation because they're spending their time differently. That's when we put the wheels back on the car and get them rolling down the street again. And they're back in the flow of life. Mike Damon also said something really important. He said that a person has to volunteer somewhere so that they have some purpose in their life and they have some perspective. And one important thing he said was, even if it's 4 hours at the food pantry on Sunday, walking into a food pantry, just volunteering there, you see people coming in that need food. That alone kind of puts some things in perspective, and you feel good while you're facilitating and helping that happen, right? So it's getting you outside of your head is very, very important in doing that.
Those are great points, and especially if you want to feel good, help someone.
Yes.
You know, somebody once asked me why I do the charity work I do. I said, because I'm selfish. Makes me feel good. Sorry, but that's the truth. You know, yeah, we help a lot of people. We've helped veterans and children, and God, we've done so many. But the truth is, I feel so much better after. And listen, if you're listening to this, what Brett was talking about, that progression of getting out of the gutter, being dusted up, I know it's not easy. I know it's not. It's not. But everything is on the line. So it's important for you to do it. Just take that first step and then let people help you take the next one. The first step is calling 988, calling suicide prevention lifeline, whatever. But yeah, and you were very right about calling the right person. You ever call somebody having a really hard time and they go, oh, you think that's bad? You know, that's not why you called them. But not everybody is equipped to help you. Not everybody is trained. That's why you call those numbers. Because if it gets to the point where this world would be better without me, yeah, you should call. There's something else I wanted to talk to you about, Brett. This is personal. I've had 2 people I know, friends, I would call them friends, and one was even a close friend, who we lost to suicide. They showed no signs that they were having any problems or were in a bad place. If they did, one of them, he would have had 10 people help. You know, both of them. How do we recognize that someone may be thinking about suicide if they don't reach out, if they don't show any signs that they're in a bad place? I know
that's a deep question. And what I want to say is, when you have moments in this world with people, try to drop down to the deepest place of emotional connection when you're one-on-one with somebody. Often we laugh off each other's problems, right? Meaning, because it's uncomfortable to talk about, right? It's uncomfortable. We make jokes about it, but we don't know what's below their problems there, right? And the thing to think about also is, was anything else going on in their life? Anything else? Job change, financial issues, anything. And I don't know the answer to that. But if one of your friends is going through a change, it's the connection that you have with them that will allow them to be vulnerable enough to share with you their problem. So if you care about someone, show them your vulnerable side at times. That strengthens a deeper level of the emotional connection and camaraderie you have with people that we all have together. And we are the glue of the universe. To me, it's all about the weakest link. And if you can dive down there, I know sometimes what you're saying, it's hard to identify who they are, where they are, but the way you can surface them in your life is by being real, genuine, compassionate, and loving with the people that you're with, and being a great listener. And that's what I really meant about our, joking around with our buddies and stuff like that. Guys, I feel, have a tendency to do this more, where we kind of minimize our problems, make jokes about it and things like that. But some of it might be really stinging underneath. So if somebody is making those jokes, or someone says, I feel like I'm losing my mind, go to the 5 prompts. Please tell me more.
Mhm.
I want to hear everything. Imagine your buddy was complaining about his freaking boss, right? And you were like, wow, that sucks. Tell me more. And then you just shut up. That's the key of this, zipping it up.
Yeah.
And just sitting back and receiving, leaning in with one palm up, giving them those subconscious signals to their brain that you are receptive. Often we're looking at our phone, we're doing other things, and they're like, I'm not telling this person, right? But if you're dialed into the moment in the conversation and your heart's, that's another thing, your heart being open. My first teacher, when he would get on a plane, often the person next to him would start crying. His presence would just surface their pain because his heart was wide open, right? And that is the key in being in the moment, being compassionate, being loving, not being worried about what they're going to say, but just being there for the sake of them, right? Being in service. And I love what you said earlier about, like being selfish with the volunteering, right? People, when they say to me, oh, you're such a great guy, this and that, I'm like, I laugh because I'm super selfish with good karma. I'm living for the next life. Sorry, I'm living for the next life. So, it's, I'm banking my karma chips to live for the next life. So I'm actually selfish with it. And the more the universe looks at me as someone that's a giver and a sharer, the universe has to give me what I'm sharing. So I actually become a great receiving machine. So I'm actually selfish with receiving the love that I'm sharing before I even let it go out of my heart, right? So it's really being present, staying in the moment, leaning in with childlike curiosity, and serenading their pain from them by just being a good listener, by just zipping it, right? And that's usually where the tell me more, I want to hear everything. Wow, what does that feel like? That must be tough. Now you're opening up one of those plumes, getting an open spot to express. That could be in a bar, that could be anywhere. That could be at work, that could be taking a water break, taking a walk to the bathroom. Right. It could be anywhere. It could be checking in. Here's another thing that we could do. People that we know that are mentally ill, depressed, that are going through, just check in on them. I want to share this one super important story.
Please.
Dear friend of mine of 30 years has battled depression in and out, throughout the decades, but more recently was like underneath the sewer with it, wanted to die, hands down. So, and he's a great guy, right? So 7 of his best friends, me being one of them, we put together a group chat. We all got together on it. I taught them the 5 prompts. Each of us had one day to check in with him. I had Tuesdays, everybody else had another day. So he was getting a check-in call with one of his dear friends that loves him, and we were just doing the prompts. And he was venting, right? Now that was going on for a little bit, and that got him to a certain place. But then the family had to make a decision to have him go to an out-of-state recovery center. Now, this recovery center was for depression and substance abuse. You live there for a month. He said he wasn't going back to a hospital. He was hospitalized twice. Okay. He just wasn't going back to a hospital. He felt that he was more messed up coming out of it. Right. So he wasn't going back to the hospital. He's depressed. His friends are there. And we got him to be open to go somewhere for a month and leave his family for a month with 3 kids in the house and a wife. Right. Big deal to get out of your own matrix, to get out of your own routine. He felt he couldn't leave. He couldn't get help because everybody needed him, but we all convinced him to go. He went, thank God. And he didn't like the place. Okay. But here's the deal. When he got home, he loved being home. He's like, he realized how much he missed his family. He realized how much he missed his family and how much he loves his family. And then the love started coming through. And finally, I just want to say, when I was suicidal, when my son was very young, when I realized I was losing him in the family court case, when I was trying to get full custody of him. I wanted to die. He was on my lap, 3 years old, and that's usually when I was happiest. And I had a vision of me being in a tub, slitting my wrists and bleeding out. And in that vision, I had a feeling of relaxation. I said, oh my God, I am messed up. So I went to a person that was an amazing counselor for me in the past. She sat me down and said something that snapped me out of it. And she was like an old Italian grandmother kind of energy. She was like an oracle for me. She knew me really well, and it was just what I needed to hear. Everyone is different. She said to me, do you want me to smack the crap out of you?
Mhm.
And that just kind of woke me up. I was used to tough love from my mom when I was young, and that kind of snapped me out of it. And then I was able to get to the gym in the morning, able to express my emotions, able to release it, and find some things that I was really happy about and get back into the flow of life. Okay. I started going to this free-form dance in the city, and that was every Tuesday night. So my schedule changed, and my brain and my emotions changed, right? So I think the overarching thing that I wanted to share was reaching out, having a support system around you. If you know someone suicidal that's depressed, check in on them, talk to the ones that love them, create that support system. We had an Excel spreadsheet of who was calling him on which days, and we would text each other after those calls so everyone knew how he was doing. There were times they brought me in on the phone call after someone was on with him for like 40 minutes and they were doing the prompts. And I was just sitting there observing and chiming in here and there. And then it was three of us on the line. So that's the kind of net we want to throw people. That's the kind of net we want to throw people.
And you know what? I love the idea of scheduling something. Once you find out, if you're listening to this and you're one of those people that I talked about, you don't tell anyone what you're actually going through, try it. Try telling someone. Try telling a guy like Brett. You might find yourself surrounded by a lot of love and a lot of help. A lot is on the line, so you should definitely do that. What do you think, Brett, is the biggest misconception that the general public has about people who have suicide thoughts?
That they could shake it off, that it's under their control, and that it is a problem we can approach through the mental. This is an emotional problem. Mental illness starts with the heart, and the guided expression of the 5 prompts helps unpack the emotional pain, which then clears the issues inside the brain. So this is very important to understand. So I want to say it again. All mental illness starts in the heart. The 5 prompts help us unpack the emotional pain, to unwind it, to unlock it and release it. Once that happens, the issues start to clear in the brain, and we start to integrate throughout our body, and our thought process is less scattered. We could see things more clearly.
Right.
So that's the key. When it's safe to be in the body. It's not safe to be in the body when there's 50 sewer plates on your chest, right? And you can't breathe and you feel like you're suffocating. So the tension of suicidal ideation is like a black hole emotionally.
Right.
It's like a vortex that's sucking in your energy. So what we do is the energy work, the breath work, and we use the prompts. We also use a few other exercises that I train the counselors and parents in to unlock and release and reverse the energetics of it. It's all energy, right? So there's 2 forces of energy, expansion and constriction, right? Depression is constriction, unconditional love is expansion. So we dive into the constriction, and with exercises, we expand it from the inside out. And that is how we do it. We focus on the body, we focus on the emotions, and then those positive effects reflect in the mind.
And I think you're right. I think generally people who think you can just get over it, there's no reason to be so depressed. You don't know. You don't know when it's a mental thing, or it's a something to do with the heart. You don't know how they're feeling. Even if you've been through the same thing, you don't know how they're feeling. I went through that. The grieving process, people think, well, yeah, I know what you're feeling. No, you don't. You're not that person. So, yeah, the general public need to know that trained people like you are out there. I know you have a program, the ITRC, Intuitive Trauma Recovery Coach program. How is that going?
It is amazing. It's going to be an incredible program. This is our third certification program, and this will be my third training in teaching people how to do these types of techniques. One thing I wanted to share around just raising a little bit more awareness around how we get to that depressed and suicidal place.
Please.
If you're feeling suicidal and depressed, it's only logic. It is normal in our insane world.
Okay.
It starts with stress. It compounds. It turns into anxiety. When that's not addressed, it compounds. It turns into overwhelm. When that is not addressed, it compounds and turns into hopelessness. When hopelessness is not addressed, it compounds and turns into depression. And depression, week after week, suicidal ideation is the brain's way, it's a logical way to end extended periods of emotional pain. That's all it is.
Yep. I had a psychologist tell me once that suicide makes perfect sense. So what the hell do you mean by that? He goes, it's the end of pain. Oh, well, yeah, I guess, but not the preferred kind, but yeah. And he was right. And you're right. If you think of it going through all those stages, somewhere before it gets to that, let's step in and do something to help yourself.
And, if you're feeling or thinking those thoughts, my life was a waste, everyone's better off without me, I'm going to call BS on that, because when we are on the phone with somebody, we say, okay, let's see if that's true. Let's merge your parents right now. Let's merge your siblings. Let's call them right now. Let's see what they have to say. You might be right. Let's see. So it's not true. Okay. And I encourage you, if you're feeling that way, to try me on it. Go to stressisgone.com, call the 833 number, and just see what the experience brings you. Experience the relief. You deserve to have the relief. And going back into the ITRC program, that is our coaching program that I'll be certifying intuitive trauma recovery coaches. And in one of the modules is the suicide prevention protocol. And this is where I train people how to let go of their own stress, their own emotional pain, while someone else is opening up to them. This is vital for parents of kids struggling. This is vital for therapists that have a high caseload and with a lot of folks that are suicidal, or even one. Or if you're a therapist or a licensed social worker, or, a nurse that's in the trauma unit.
And school guidance counselor.
School guidance counselors, all these people have been in my past certifications, right? Social workers. Whenever you get triggered, and it's normal to be triggered when you hear someone else's suicidal ideation and their pain, it's a normal human response. But the key is unlocking it from your body and your psyche first, so you could be really in the moment, really present, really pull them in so they experience your connection, so they know they're heard, cared for, right? And you see their pain. Once you do that, more of their pain comes up. And with the 5 prompts, we're kind of like excavating their pain from their heart, from their cellular memory and the back of the psyche. Now we're starting to clear things out for them, starting to create some more breathing room, because they're expressing things on a deeper layer. We are going underneath the subconscious divide, and we're getting into the back of the psyche and expressing the core emotions that are really freaking them out, that are really driving them to want to leave here. Once we express that core pain, then we just set them up with a few things during their week or during their day that are more fun, and the wheels get back on to the car and they're in motion in life again. So the ITRC program is an amazing program, very proud of it. We teach people how to open up their intuition, how to release their own stress during a coaching session. And then I teach them 8 techniques that I've honed over the last 25 years. And they use their intuition to hand pick any combination of the techniques throughout the session. Mm-hmm. The first 15 minutes of the session is spent in discovery, where we dig deep into the psyche and surface the real issue, their core fear. So if you think about anger, that's protecting a sadness. The sadness is a reflection of a core fear. The core fear is a reflection of an illusion that you are anything separate than love. Okay. So, like issues that we had in our formative years or during a breakup recently or losing a loved one, we put the idea that our love came from them. But the truth of the matter is, the heart is a love machine. We are the machine that makes the love that we feel. Other people might trigger the feeling in us and bring up that love when we see them, but it's all coming from here. So it's really understanding that the love comes from us. When they reconnect with the feeling of love coming from the inside out, that's when they break through the eggshell of this problem. That's when they crack the eggshell and they could breathe again. And it's inside work. So that intuitive trauma recovery coach program starts September 9th, and we go to December 12th. So it's a 3-month program, 12 weeks. We have off the week of Thanksgiving, and we have off 1 week in October while we're at our retreat at Kripalu. And it's just going to be an amazing, amazing transformational program, because the people that enroll, we are practicing on each other. So you're actually removing the staph from your own eye before you remove a splinter from someone else's. We're letting go of our own pain to practice the tools. So when you come out of this program, you're going to be a rock star. You're going to be a lot clearer than you were going in, and you'll have a tool belt that is perfectly suited for this problem. And if you look out at the landscape of the world, our society, our culture, humanity, suicides on the rise, emotional pains through the roof, confusion, complex PTSD, these tools help for all of it. So I encourage you to awaken the healer within, to dive into this ITRC program, become an intuitive trauma recovery coach, and help those around you. This is one of the most fulfilling things that I can ever do with my time. I love doing these trainings, and I feel if you gave it a shot, you'd love it too.
And they can find that at stressisgone.com, right?
Yep. If you go to stressisgone.com, you go right up to the top. Yeah, you'll see the program. You click right up top, and then it'll direct you to the certification page.
And just as a side note, Brett has done a webinar for the American Institute of Stress, and you can find that webinar on our website at stress.org. You just look in the shop and see all the webinars that are available, and you'll see the one that Brett Cotter has done for us, which was great, by the way. That's going to wrap it up for today. We're running out of time, so I bet I know we don't give enough time to this important subject, but we're at a crunch. We can't talk. It should be an ongoing conversation anywhere. Once again, if you're feeling suicidal, you're having thoughts of it, don't forget, call 988, call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. I'll put the number down there again. Brett, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you helped a lot of people today understand that the first step is calling a guy like Brett. Just make a phone call. Don't do nothing. And that's going to do it for us today. This has been your host, Will Heckman. I want to thank you all for joining us today and remind everyone, just as stress is different for each of us, there's no one stress reduction management strategy is right for everyone. So make sure you join us next time as we explore more stress management strategies and insights. And that's going to do it for today. Have a good day.
Thanks so much for having me on, Will.